Hi and welcome to this Illustrator tutorial for beginners. Today we'll be creating this Kawaii Cupcake. It is a tutorial for beginners, so please be patient. We will be going a little bit slower than I would be usually. But that's going to be perfect if you're just starting out using Illustrator. The cupcake itself is really just made up of basic shapes, and I'll be guiding you through these as we go. So yeah, let's get into it. The first thing you're going to want to do is open up a new document. So go to File and New. I'm going to set my document dimensions to 140mm by 110mm, then click Create. I'll link the template that I'm using down in the description so you can download it and use it yourself, or you can just go ahead and freestyle it. If you want to use my template, go to File, Place, navigate to where you stuck the template, click on it and then press Place. It's not going to immediately place, so go to the right top hand corner of the artboard and then click left mouse button. And that's going to place it for you. Just so I know what this layer is, I'm going to double click on the layer in the Layers panel and then rename it Template. And the next thing I want to do is create a new layer. So down in the bottom of the Layers panel you'll see a folded piece of paper icon. Click that and you'll get a new layer. Now if I hold down on that layer, I can then drag it below template. So that means all the work I do is going to be underneath the template layer. And then you're good to go. For the sake of the tutorial, I'm going to be using my original file, so don't worry that you don't have all the same layers that I have. Just one other thing to point out before we get started. This black box here is going to show you whatever keys I press, so that's hopefully going to make it easier for you to be able to learn the keyboard shortcuts. The other thing you might notice is the coloured squares I've got on the right hand side. These are just swatches taken from the original artwork. It just makes it easier for me to grab the same colours again. Don't worry that you don't have these. The first thing I want to do is click the eye on the final layer, and that's going to turn off the visibility, so I'm just working with the template layer underneath. After that I want to lock the template layer so I don't interfere with it. So next to the eye on the template layer there's an empty box. If you click that, a little lock will come up. That shows you that it's locked. Then I want to create a new layer, so just like we did in the empty document originally, we're going to click the little folded paper icon to bring up a new layer. Then I'm going to head over to my Tools palette, and where you see the green, I'm going to click the little arrow next to it. That will change the green from a fill to a stroke. Then I'm going to double click that, which brings up the colour picker. From there you can pick any colour, but I'm going to go for a dark grey. You can see that by pressing the little double-headed arrow next to the colour you've just made, it switches the colour from a stroke colour to a fill colour. After that I'm going to head up to the shape tool, that's the one underneath the T, and grab myself a rectangle. If you don't see the rectangle, just long click on whatever shape's there and you'll get the options coming up. Then, starting at the edge of the cupcake, I'm going to click, hold and drag out a rectangle. These little circles in the corners of the rectangle allow you to add a radius to the corners of your shape. So if we select one and drag it in towards the centre, you can see that it rounds off the edges. Now I want to take a closer look, so I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut to get in there. What I'm going to do is press Command, Spacebar, and then with the left mouse button draw out a rectangle, and that's the zoom area. You can see that I've just pressed V. This is the keyboard shortcut for the selection tool. I'll tell you the difference between the direct selection tool and the selection tool a little bit later on. Then I'm going to go back up to my tools panel, select my rectangle tool and draw out a rectangle. You can see that I've pressed A. This is the shortcut for the direct selection tool, and it allows you to click on individual points rather than clicking on the whole shape. So I'm going to click on the point in the bottom left hand corner, and then using Shift and the arrow keys, I'm going to move the corner inwards. And then the same on the other side. As you can see, I'm going to pull in the little circles to once again create beveled edges. But as you can see, because I'm still on the direct selection tool, it's only doing one corner at once. I want to add a bit of a curve into the bottom, so I'm going to press P which is the pen tool, and add another anchor point in to the bottom of the rectangle. When I move the cursor over the line, a plus symbol comes up. This means you're going to add an anchor point in. Then I'm going to drag the point down, and making sure that the pen tool is still selected, I'm going to hold Alt and pull out the anchor's handles. This basically allows you to change the degree of the curve. I'm just going to click off that to make sure that I don't mess it up. So switching the visibility of the template layer on and off shows you what you've done so far. Now I'm going to draw an ellipse, so I'm going to go up to my Tools panel, Shape Tool, and in there you'll find the ellipse. And then drag it out. Press V to go back to the Selection tool, and then duplicate this ellipse by holding down Alt and dragging it across. If you press Shift at the same time as Alt when you're dragging, it makes sure that it maintains the same horizontal axis. Now I'm going to show you how to quickly make a series of duplicated circles by using the Blend tool. As you can see, even with both circles selected, you don't have the option for the preview at the moment, and this is because you haven't told it which object needs to blend with which object. So with the Blend tool still selected, you want to select the center of the right circle and the center of the left circle. You'll then get lots of circles filling the gap between the circle on the left and the circle on the right. If you double click on the Blend tool in the toolbar, you'll then get your blend options. If you click the preview, you can then take the number of steps, so the number of instances of the circles, up and down. I think I'm going to leave mine about 6. Then click OK. You can see in the toolbar on the left hand side, the stroke colour selector now has question marks in it. This means it doesn't know exactly what the colour is, and that's because there is a blend between the two objects. To solve this, go up to Object in the menu, down to Expand, and then click. Now you'll be shown the Expand dialog box, then select OK. The blend of circles have now become individual circles, and we can switch these from stroke to fill colour. To get the colour I want, I'm going to use my eyedropper tool, shortcut I, and then I'm going to select the pink. The eyedropper tool allows you to quickly copy properties from one object to another object. Now I'm going to select the base and do the same thing again. Now I want to merge these circle objects into one single object using the Pathfinder tool. As you can see at the moment, all these circles are different objects. But if we use the Unite tool under Pathfinder, you'll see that all of the circles blend into one. Now I want to merge this new object with the rectangle object of the base. To do that, we're going to select both of the pink objects and then find the Shape Builder tool in the tool palette. As you move your mouse over different parts of the two objects, you'll see that they become hashed or greyed out. These are the areas that you're about to edit. Also, you'll notice when you press the Shift key, your cursor turns from a plus to a minus. The minus obviously means you can subtract the areas that are greyed out. And that's what we're going to do, just going around cleaning out the overlapping areas. The next thing I want to do is to use the Unity tool again from the Pathfinder to completely merge all of the pink objects. Now I want to use my eyedropper tool again to colour in the cake. I'm going to use Command and minus to zoom out a little bit. Just to have a look at progress, I'm going to turn the template visibility on and off. You can see that I still need to add the curves in to the side of the base. And I'm going to do this by drawing out an ellipse, then rotating it slightly by moving the cursor down to the corner of the boundary box where the rotation arrows will appear, and slightly stretch it to make it fit. It doesn't have to be 100%. Then using Alt and Shift, I'm going to drag out a duplicate copy. Then right click, transform, and then reflect. Making sure vertical is selected, click OK. Move it into position, and then we're going to use the Shape Builder tool again, so select both egg shapes and then the pink shape in the middle. Now using Alt, click away the overlapping areas. Let's turn the template off and see what it looks like. OK. Now I want to zoom in and work on the icing area. To draw the icing, we're going to be using the pen tool. This may seem a bit daunting, but these are only really simple shapes we're doing. So, left mouse button to place your first anchor. Then, move along, click and hold the left mouse button. This allows you to drag out the handles, which will affect how the curve looks. Keep on clicking and dragging to make your way around the shape. When you get towards the end and you notice a small circle next to your cursor, this means you're about to connect to the first anchor point and join up the whole shape. Select the colour picker from the tool palette and select a very light grey. This was the one that I used. To make drawing around the shape easier, I'm going to switch it from a fill colour to a stroke colour. Now I'm just going to continue to trace around the shape. If you make a mistake, just Command Z to undo it and do it again. Here I made a mistake, so rather than undoing it, I'm going to press A, which is the direct selection tool, and then move that anchor point back up to where I think it should be. Then pressing P, I can continue on drawing around the shape. Here I need to change the angle of the curve, so again I'm going to press A, then grab one of the handles and move the curve around until it looks right. Okay, we're done, so zoom out a little bit. Select all of the blobs you've just created, making sure that you're only selecting these and not the template underneath. And then eyedropper tool the grey so it all fills in. This next part looks a bit more complicated, but actually it's really quite simple. So I'm going to turn off the template layer just so I can see clearly what's going on. Then I'm going to select each one of the grey blobs, Command C, copy, Command F, which is paste in front. That means that it will paste in front of the object you've just copied. And if I move it to one side, you can see there's another set of grey blobs underneath. I'm going to make these top ones a kind of mauve colour, just to make it easier to see what's going on. Then I'm going to unite them all as a single shape, again using the Pathfinder tool. Next I'm going to go up to Object, Path, and then select Offset Path. This will bring up an Offset Path dialog box. In there you have various options, round, bevel, etc. And you can select Preview to see what you're doing. Basically, plus numbers make the image larger than the original, minus make it smaller. I want to go to -2. Now I'm just going to move this newly created shape around a little bit until it looks right to me. To make it easier to see what's going on, I'm going to make it this sexy blue colour. Then selecting both of the objects, I want to go to the Pathfinder tool and select -front. This is going to take the blue away from the dark purple colour. Now just using the direct selection tool, I want to just clean up any areas that are left over by clicking on them and pressing delete. This purple shape is going to become the shadow of the icing, so I want to make it a similar but darker grey. So I'm going to eyedropper the grey colour, then go to the colour picker and choose a slightly darker grey. To make the highlights, I'm going to repeat the process. Selecting each one of the original grey blobs, copy and paste in front. I'm going to change the colour so you can see what's happening, but you don't have to. Then Pathfinder Unite. Back up to Object in the menu, Path, Offset Path. This time I want to make it very slightly larger. Then I'm going to move it slightly off to one side. And I'll change the colour so you can see what's going on. Then I'm going to select this and the other dark blue one and use the Shape Builder tool to subtract these different parts. Now I'm left with this single blue bit, I can change it into white. Now I've done that, I'm going to select each one of the grey blobs, copy them, paste in front, then give them a dark stroke. Okay, so what's happened here is the strokes are in front of the original object, but they're not in front of all the other objects. So I'm going to quickly bring these to the front. The key command for that is Shift, Command, curly bracket. Then I'm going to Command G, which is going to group these as one object, double click on them, and that dives down into the newly created group. From here, you can edit all of the elements of just that group without worrying about anything else on your artboard. You'll notice that the Layers panel has also changed to isolation mode. To come out from that group, you can just press Escape. Okay, so go back into the group, select everything, and then we're going to use the Shape Builder tool to get rid of some of those stray lines. Come out of that group and let's zoom out to see what's going on. So the highlight looks like it's behind the shadow. So I'm just going to use Command and curly brace until it's where I want it to be. Then I'm just going to drop the opacity down a little bit. Let's just have a quick look at the final design again. Then I'm going to put the template back on and start to work on some of the other details. You can see I just moved the artboard very slightly to get it into a better position. I just did that by pressing spacebar and moving my mouse around with a left mouse button clicked. Now I want to start drawing in the eyes, so I'm going to grab the ellipse tool, L, and start drawing over the template. As you can see, if I just click and drag out the circle normally, it's completely unconstrained. But if I hold down Shift, it will always keep it to the same ratio. And by pressing Alt at the same time, I can draw the circle out from the centre rather than from one of the edges. Once I've done that, I'm just going to move it off to one side so I can make more circles. I'm going to change this one to white, then Alt drag to copy it, resize it slightly, and then repeat for the third one. This third one I'm going to reduce the opacity slightly. Move the first circle back into place, select all of the ellipses and then group them together. Now that they're a group, you can Alt drag them to copy them to the other side. With the copy still selected, you want to right click, go to transform, then to reflect, then click OK. This is going to flip the group around. Okay, now we're going to have a look at the mouth. So grabbing the rectangle tool, I'm going to start drawing it out. Then I'm going to change the colour slightly. And then using the direct selection tool, I'm going to hold Shift and click the bottom two corners. This means that when I pull the corner circle in, it will only affect the bottom two corners. And we're going to do a similar thing for the tongue. So with the rectangle tool, draw in the basic shape. And I'm going to change this to a fleshy red colour. Again, select the bottom two corners using the direct selection tool. Then pull in those little white circles to round off the corners. To make the top of the tongue, I'm going to use the ellipse tool. Just move it down a little bit and then resize it. Duplicate it over. Then selecting each one of the tongue bits, I'm going to go to the Shapefinder tool and delete the bits at the top. Then, still on the Shape Builder tool, I'm going to hold down Command and drag a line from the ellipses to the bottom part of the tongue. This is going to merge those together into one shape. Just zoom out a bit. Then I'm going to add a stroke to the cupcake wrapper. So select the empty stroke box from the toolbar and then set it to be a dark purple. Actually, now just using the toolbar at the top of the screen, I'm going to increase the weight of that stroke. Here in the stroke menu, you can see there are quite a few options, but what we want to look at is the align stroke. From here you can change whether the stroke is centered, inside, or the outside. We're going to go for outside. Now I'm just going to turn off the template layer so I can see what's going on. In the stroke panel, I'm also going to change the cap and corner to rounded. Zooming in, I want to start making the ridges for the cupcake wrapper. To do this, I'm going to select the cupcake wrapper. That's going to give me the pre-selected colours. I'm going to select off it. Then in the toolbar, I want to select the fill colour to be no fill. To do this, I'm going to select the fill colour, and you'll see it switches it to the front. Then I'm going to select the white box with the red stroke through it, which is just below here, and that's going to change it to no fill. Then using the pen tool, I'm going to start drawing in the lines. After each one, I'm going to command click off it to make sure I start a new path each time. And once I'm happy with them, I'm just going to make sure that the first three are selected, Alt, drag, to copy them over, and then like we did before, I'm just going to flip them over. Then I'm going to make sure that the tongue and the mouth are grouped together, and then bring it to the front. Remember that's Command, Shift, and curly bracket. And do the same thing with the eyes. Okay, now it's starting to look like something. Now I want to start thinking about the shading, so I'm just going to grab my pen tool and kind of roughly draw in some shadows. At the moment it doesn't really matter what colour it is, just so long as you can see what you're drawing. Then once I've finished off the path, I'm just going to make it a darker brown colour. Something like this. Now making sure that both bits of the bun are selected, I'm going to go back up to the Shape Builder tool and remove the hangy over bits. At the moment it's sitting on top of everything, so using Command and curly brace, I'm just going to keep taking it down layers until it looks right and it's behind the pink cupcake wrapper. Now I'm going to start making the shadow for the cupcake wrapper, so I'm going to go ahead and select the dark purple. Then using the pen tool, I'm just going to draw out the shape. Remember that only the inside curve needs to be accurate here. Everything else is going to get cut away anyway. And once you've done that, make sure that the light pink cupcake wrapper is selected as well, and then go to the Shape Builder tool. And just like before, we're going to trim off the overhanging parts. It's a bit too strong at the moment, so I'm just going to knock it back a little bit by reducing the opacity to about here. Actually, I think this curve can look better, so I'm just going to tweak it until it looks right. Move this here, pull out this a little bit. Yeah, that's looking better now. Now I'm going to start thinking about the highlights of the top of the wrapper. First off, I'm just going to grab a nice light pink colour. Then using the pen tool again, I'm going to start drawing in the shape. And just like before, we're going to grab the Shape Builder tool to knock the overhanging bits off. Then I'm just going to knock it back a little bit by taking the opacity down. Actually, I'm also going to make it a slightly lighter pink. And at the moment, it's sitting above the vertical stripes. So I'm just going to use Command and curly bracket to move it backwards until it sits underneath these stripes. I've just noticed that the mouth isn't quite in the middle, so I'm just going to move that over a tad. To add a bit more depth to the icing, I'm just going to add a bit of shading in here. So I'm going to eyedropper tool the darker grey. So just like before, I'm going to use the pen tool to draw in a bit of a shadow. And then using Command and curly bracket, I'm going to send it backwards until it's partially hidden. I'm just going to tweak these handles slightly until it looks a bit better. And I'm just going to repeat this process for the next two blobs. Okay, now we've got the shading in, it's starting to take on a bit more depth. Now I'm just going to use the ellipse tool, L, to draw some tiny highlights. I'm going to make these white and then squash them down a bit. So the next thing I want to do is make the sprinkles. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my rectangular tool, M, and draw in a tiny rectangle. I'm going to fill this with red. Zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're doing. And then I'm going to pull in those radius corners again, so it looks a bit more like a pill. I'm also going to give it a black stroke, and then set the stroke using the stroke panel to a line stroke outside. And once we've done that, we can zoom out and then drag it into place. Then just give it a bit of rotation. Actually, I'm just going to take the stroke down a little bit so it isn't so bold. Then holding Alt, I'm just going to drag copies out, then give them a bit of rotation. Once I feel like I've got enough of those red ones, I'm going to make some blue ones. Then I'll add some green ones in. Okay, we're looking good. I'm just going to add a little bit of a highlight in here. And I'll do that by selecting a very light brown colour. And then using the pen tool, I'm going to draw in this shape. Then just like before, I will select this and then the undercolour brown, go to the Shape Builder tool, and then holding Alt, trim off the excess. Then using Command and left curly brace, I'm going to take the layer backwards until it looks right and sits underneath the shadow. Okay, zoom out a bit and I think we're almost done. Just one final thing I want to do, just to make it pop, I want to put a big dark stroke around the entire outside of the object. To do this, I'm going to select all of the objects on the page using my selection tool. Command C, Command F to copy and paste in front. Then, using the Unite tool in the Pathfinder palette, I'm going to unite all the shapes into one single shape. Then I'm going to remove the red, so we're left with just the stroke. Make sure that the stroke is selected, and then we're going to increase the width of the stroke. I'm going to do this by going up to the top panel and clicking the down arrow, and then I can select one of the numbers. I'm also just going to make sure that the stroke is aligned to outside. You can find this, remember, in the stroke panel. And there we have your finished cupcake. Now if you want to continue, you can add a bit of a snazzy background like I'm going to do, or you could just finish it there. If you want to add a background, I suggest you lock the layer like I've done, and then you can work on the background without being interrupted. So for the background, the first thing I'm going to do is select the background layer, and then with the rectangle tool shape, draw in a rectangle that completely covers the background. Then I'm going to change this to a pastel-y light blue colour, something a bit like this. Then the next thing I want to do is a bit of a magic trick. So I'm going to grab my ellipse tool, L, go to the centre of the artboard and pull out a circle. Then I'm going to change the colour to similar to the background colour but slightly darker. Hit OK and then switch it from a fill colour to a stroke colour. Then selecting dashed line in the stroke panel and increasing the weight to something like 150, I'll get something like this. Actually 200 takes the strokes off the artboard, which is exactly what I'm looking for, so we'll go with that. Then I want to select the background rectangle that you drew before, copy it and paste it in front again. Then to bring it to the front of everything on that layer, I'm going to use Shift, Command, right curly brace, and this is going to send it to the front. And with the rectangle still selected, I'm going to Alt-click on the strokes you just made to select those as well, and then I'm going to hit Command and 7, and this is the shortcut for a mask. And that's going to mask off everything outside the rectangle you just made. I'll go on to explain masks in more detail in another video, but for now, just marvel at your new creation. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope this video was useful to you. If you liked it, remember please give it a thumbs up, that always helps. And if you don't, then maybe one of my other videos will do the trick instead.